I know, you're probably thinking, this isn't a Fire Emblem video? And you would be right. This happens to be a Star Wars video. Now don't worry, there are plenty more Fire Emblem videos on the way as we speak, but believe it or not, I probably love Star Wars just as much, if not more, than Fire Emblem. So you can expect to see the same level of quality in the galaxy far, far away as you can get with the Radiant Hero. So let's get to it. I have the coolest theory about Abeloth and the Night Sisters, and I am baffled that no one else has talked about it or even thought about it yet, at least as far as I know. Ever since the season finale of season 1 of the Ahsoka show, fans have been speculating about what's to come next. Theories and questions about things like the Mortis gods, who can be seen as 3 statues at the end of the final episode, what or who might be calling to Baylan, and the future of the world between worlds, the Night Sisters, Ahsoka, Shin, and even Anakin. I have multiple theories that might answer some of these questions, but before I get to that, we need to go over what we do know, including some other well-known theories that have already circled the internet. The most popular theory out there right now is in regards to Abeloth. Now, you might be wondering, who the heck is Abeloth? And I'll get to that in a minute, but before we do, we're going to get a little sweaty here and talk about the Mortis gods, and I promise I'm going to try and simplify this and summarize it as much as I can. Like I mentioned earlier, at the end of the last episode of Ahsoka, Baylan's skull can be seen standing on the hand of a giant statue. These 3 statues are depictions of the Mortis gods, or the Ones. These gods are known as the Father, the Son, and the Daughter. The Father represents and maintains the balance of the Force, and his children represent the light side and the dark side of the Force. There are a few episodes in the Clone Wars that cover these characters a bit when they have a planned encounter with Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka on the planet of Mortis. If you haven't seen these episodes, I highly recommend watching them. They're some of the most interesting episodes in the entire show. But essentially, the Father had intended to bring Anakin to the planet because he heard he was the chosen one, and he knew that eventually he would die and need a replacement to hold the balance in the Force. He knew only Anakin would be able to take on the role of the new Father. Several interesting things happen over the course of these episodes, but mainly, the Son attempts to kill the Father and escape the planet in order to spread the dark side further across the galaxy. Before he's able to do so, he kills his sister, the Daughter, by accident while attempting to kill the Father. As the Daughter is dying, she transfers her life essence into Ahsoka, who had also been killed by the Son during the events of these episodes. Eventually, the Father distracts the Son by killing himself to allow Anakin to then kill the Son. After these events on Mortis, Anakin, Ahsoka, and Obi-Wan have their minds wiped of everything that took place, and the planet of Mortis disappears. Okay, so where does Abeloth come in? First, it's important for me to mention that everything we know about Abeloth comes from the now non-canon Legends books. But if she does come to canon, which I believe she will, it's important to understand her backstory in Legends. Thousands of years before the events on Mortis in the Clone Wars, the Ones lived on a different unknown planet. And while they were there, the Son and the Daughter fought constantly, as the Light and Dark always do. One day, a human woman came to the planet. She was able to help the Father keep the peace between the Son and the Daughter. And eventually, she ended up marrying the Father and becoming the mother of the Ones. As time went on, she began to grow old and knew that she would soon die because, unlike the Ones, she was mortal. Now, on this planet, there was something called the Fountain of Power and the Pool of Knowledge. The mother believed that if she bathed in the Pool of Knowledge and drank from the Fountain of Power, she could become immortal like her family. But instead, these things ended up corrupting her because it was all too much for a mortal being. This is when she becomes Abeloth.
Whoa, look at these wrinkles. What is holding this woman together? What the... How long has that been there?
Abeloth is all about chaos and destruction, and she begins to fight the Ones in an attempt to kill them. Because of this, the Father takes his children and they abandon their planet in order to live on Mortis, which strands Abeloth. Every few thousand years or so, the Ones would return to the planet to fight Abeloth to keep her imprisoned on the planet to prevent her from destroying everything in the galaxy. Alright, jumping back into canon, let's fast forward to the events of the Ahsoka show. During most of the show, Baylan's skull mentions that something is calling to him, and when they arrive on the planet Peridia, he can tell that what calls to him is close. And when we see him standing on the hand of what appears to be the Father, we see him looking out into the distance, and if you look closely, we can see a glowing red, almost diamond-like shape floating above some sort of mountain. This almost seems to be something similar to what we see on Mortis during the Clone Wars. I think Peridia may possibly be the original home planet of the Ones, and the popular theory out there is that what calls to Baylan is in fact Abeloth. Now, in Legends, Luke Skywalker and his Jedi Order had to fight Abeloth on a few occasions. During that time, several Jedi were called to by Abeloth, and she ended up making them go crazy or controlling their bodies and minds. And in my opinion, that's what's being alluded to at the end of the Ahsoka show with Baylan. Okay, so the last thing I want to mention about Abeloth and the Ones before we move on is something called the Dagger of Mortis. Dagger is what's used in the Clone Wars to kill the Daughter and the Father. The Son is actually killed by Anakin's lightsaber, which honestly leads me to believe that the Son isn't fully dead, at least not yet, but that's for a completely different video and another time. Luke Skywalker also ends up using the dagger in the future because he believes that is the only thing that can truly kill Abeloth. So I wouldn't be surprised if the dagger came into play down the road if Abeloth does indeed end up coming into canon. Alright, so this is where my theory finally comes in.
That's why I'm here.
So if you remember, when Balin, Shin, and Morgan Elsbeth eventually touch down on Peridia, they are greeted by the Great Mothers. And it's mentioned that when Thrawn was originally banished to the planet, he woke them from some sort of slumber. It's also mentioned that Peridia was the ancient homeworld of the Dathomiri and the Night Sisters. Now wait a minute, if Peridia is what I think to be the original homeworld for both the Night Sisters and the Mortis gods, then what does that mean? Well, there are a couple possibilities. I think it's possible that the Night Sisters and the Dathomiri are descendants of Abeloth. Not necessarily the race or even the biological offspring of Abeloth. I mean the entire culture of the Night Sisters began with Abeloth. Or actually, it might have even begun with who Abeloth originally was, the Mother. Think about it. In Night Sister culture, their most prominent leaders are referred to as Mother, like the Great Mothers. The Great Mothers even reference Mother Talzin when they summon her sword for Morgan Elsbeth during the finale. Why would they use the term Mother for respected figures if they weren't referring to and paying homage to the original Mother? What if originally the Ones weren't the only living beings that existed on Peridia? Where would the Mother have come from if the Ones were all alone? There must have been another species of humans or humanoids living on the planet as well. Now I know we do see these marauders during the Ahsoka show, but we really don't know anything about them or what they look like under their helmets, so we're going to ignore them for now. Maybe the Mother is an original member of what we later come to know as the Dathomiri species, and maybe these original people actually worshipped the Ones as their gods. That could explain why there are statues of the Ones on Peridia in the first place. And when they saw the Ones take the Mother as one of their own, and the Father married her, maybe these people also saw the Mother as someone special. And what if, when the Ones eventually abandoned the planet and Abeloth, these people saw that as their gods also abandoning them, and the only one who stayed to watch over them and protect them was Abeloth, the Mother herself. This could be where this culture or religion of Night Sisters began. Even the term Night Sister could imply that once these people saw Abeloth for what she truly was, the bringer of chaos, they knew all the light in their world was gone and they'd be forced to live in darkness. It's even possible that these people weren't voluntary followers of the Mother once she became Abeloth.
Possibly.
In Legends, Abeloth often takes control of the minds of others, sometimes inhabiting their entire body. It's possible Abeloth forcefully created the Night Sisters entirely herself by taking control of the bodies of the people she once was a part of, hoping that one day she could destroy the galaxy with the help of her warped and twisted witches. And it would make sense. We know that the Night Sister witches of Dathomir don't use the Force. They use this mysterious green magic. We also know that Abeloth doesn't use the Force. She uses some twisted and vile version of it. It might not even be a version of the Force at all. It could be manifested as this dark magic. The Night Sisters could have learned their magic from the dark power that Abeloth received from the Fountain of Power and the Pool of Knowledge. We even see the Night Sisters in Clone Wars reanimate dead Night Sisters as zombies and control them with this magic. That sounds a hell of a lot like what Abeloth would do. Now, if you're still not convinced, the connections don't just stop there. There's more evidence that the Night Sisters originate from Abeloth.
Okay. Show me.
Often, Abeloth is depicted looking like this white or silver-haired woman with eyes that almost look like black holes, and a messed up mouth that covers her entire face with teeth everywhere. She has pale, thin skin that is almost sunk in, giving a similar look to a skull. Whenever we see the Night Sisters, they have a very similar look. Pale white skin, white hair, black eyes, and black tattoos on their faces that make them resemble a skull or even might reference the stretched out mouth. The references to Abeloth's look alone are everywhere, even in the statues and carvings on Dathomir and Peridia, sometimes with emphasis on the huge open mouth. And I don't think it's a coincidence that a Night Sister arc comes right before the Mortis arc in Season 3 of the Clone Wars.
Convenient.
Something else that I think is interesting is that Emperor Palpatine at one point considered Mother Talzin a threat and was even worried she could become too powerful. It's not clear whether or not Palpatine understood where the Night Sisters' power came from, or if he was even aware of Abeloth's existence at all, but he could sense that there was something more there, in my opinion. At one point, something from the Unknown Regions calls to Palpatine in a similar way that something is calling to Balin. There's also a line from Balin where he mentions that the Great Mothers want to leave Peridia because they fear a power greater than their own. In Legends, when Luke faces off against Abeloth, he does so with the help of Darth Krayt, because he knew he couldn't defeat her alone. Just like the son and the daughter did many times, it took the combined forces of the light side and the dark side to defeat Abeloth, or at least keep her at bay. Now, you might think that the Sith or Palpatine would be interested in using Abeloth's power or teaming up with her to take over the galaxy and become stronger. But if Palpatine really knew that something like Abeloth might exist, then he would know that Abeloth is not aligned with the Sith at all. Abeloth is pure chaos. The Sith do believe in rage and emotion and destruction to meet their own selfish goals, but even the Sith try to justify peace and just want to rule for selfish gain. Abeloth wants to completely destroy everything and everyone. Nothing would be left. Even the Sith and Palpatine could recognize that allowing Abeloth to exist or escape would mean the end of everything. That's why even the Great Mothers want to escape the prison world of Abeloth. Now, really quick, I will mention that there's been some connection made with the Zepho species and the Night Sisters, which we first see in the game Jedi Fallen Order. The Zepho were ancient Force users who eventually leave the main Star Wars galaxy. Most of the Zepho were Lightsiders, but one Zepho sage in particular, named Kujet, may have turned to the dark side or gone insane. I'm not as familiar with the story of the Zepho, and they haven't really been expounded upon too much in canon yet, so I'll leave this short, but I also think it's possible that Kujet was called to by Abeloth originally, and he was eventually corrupted. This might be possible foreshadowing of what is to come of Baylan or even Shin. Lastly, I want to cover what I think Anakin, Ahsoka, Baylan, and Shin's roles might be going forward. So at this point, we know that the father and the daughter are dead. It's also assumed that the son is dead too. It's clear from what we see in episode 5 that Anakin is able to access the world between worlds, and we know the Mortis gods were also able to do this. Clearly, Anakin is still fulfilling his duties as the chosen one, and also potentially taking up his role as the new father, just like the original father wanted. So we have the father covered. We also have the daughter covered. Ahsoka takes that role. The original daughter's actual life force was transferred into Ahsoka, and it's clear that that is her new purpose. Anakin knows it too. The last part is what stumps everybody. Who will take on the role of the son? Baylan? Shin? Some even speculated it would be Ezra, but I don't think so. At first, I thought it was obvious. Baylan would take up the role as the son, but then I thought about it more. Baylan isn't deep enough in the dark side for that to make sense, and Baylan is searching for something that calls to him. He's looking for an answer to stop the cycle of the Jedi and the Empire fighting, and that kind of ideology just doesn't fit with the pure dark side in my opinion. The only way I see Baylan being able to tap into the dark side enough is if something happens to Shin. Maybe Abeloth kills Shin. Maybe Abeloth takes over her body as a vessel. I bet Abeloth could convince Shin that her master abandoned her just like the ones abandoned Abeloth. And seeing Shin be corrupted by Abeloth might just push him just enough. But even then, I don't see Baylan staying in the dark. Now, it could be the other way around. Maybe Baylan is killed or corrupted, and it pushes Shin over the edge, and she takes up the role of the son. With the unfortunate passing of Ray Stevenson, this seems more likely. But Shin has also been shown to hesitate when Ahsoka offers her help, and there might be some redemption foreshadowing seen in the show as well. So honestly, it's really hard to say. Maybe the original son is just still alive, and we're looking in all the wrong places. The only other option I see is the most fan servicey, and that would be to introduce some sort of version of Starkiller or Galen Merrick into the mix. Now, if you don't know, Starkiller is the secret apprentice of Darth Vader in the Force Unleashed video games. And no, Starkiller is not currently canon either. But the two apprentices of Anakin and Darth Vader as the new representations of the light side and the dark side as the daughter and the son. It would be kind of a true balance if you think about it.
What does that have to do with anything?
No. He's got a point.
Either way, let me know what you think about my Abeloth and Night Sisters theory. If you have further evidence to the connection I tried to make, please comment down below and let me know. I'm still shocked that no one has made these same connections as far as I'm aware. I think it really has some merit, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of these details were realized in the future season of the Ahsoka show or Star Wars as a whole. Leave a like for Kenobi and hit that subscribe button if you have the high ground. May the Force be with you.